And we are live.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Capital Region Transportation Council's 2025 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Program virtual public meeting. So thank you very much for joining us. This will be a Zoom webinar. So if you've joined as a participant, um, you can see us, we can't see you, but if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. There should be a button at the bottom. If you move your mouse over the Zoom window and you can type in any question you want. We are going to run through our slides and then we'll take all of the questions at the end. So my name is Andrew Tracy and I'm the Director of Operations here at the Capital Region Transportation Council. And joining me on the webinar will be my colleague Ethan Townsend as well. So first, a little bit of background about us. Who are we? Who's the Capital Region Transportation Council? So we are the metropolitan planning organization for the four-county upstate New York capital region, pictured here. Every city in the United States has an MPO, and the MPO has a board of local elected officials that approve all of the use of federal transportation funding in the region. So the Transportation Improvement Program is a part of that. It's a list of all of the projects receiving federal funding in the region. But in addition to that, the MPO prepares a long-range transportation plan that guides how that funding will be spent in the region. You can see our members listed here. They include the counties and municipalities, in addition to agencies like DOT, CDTA, and many others. So what is the TIP? What is the Transportation Improvement Program? This is our 5-year capital plan. It's a document and it includes a list of all of the transportation projects in our planning area that are expecting to receive at least partial federal funding over the next 5 years. So the Transportation Improvement Program is the main implementation tool for our long-range transportation plan. And we update the TIP every 3 years. So the last update was back in 2022, and that was for the 22 to 27 TIP, which you can see on the right. We're in the middle of our next TIP update right now, and the new TIP will begin on the first day of the next federal fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2025, and it will run through a 5-year period. Who may receive TIP funding in our region? New York State Department of Transportation receives federal funding, as does CDTA. But all of the local public agencies in our region are eligible entities as well, the counties, the cities, towns, and villages. The project that you're seeking to fund must fall within our planning area pictured here on the right. It's the 4-county region minus the town of Moreau up in Saratoga County, which belongs to the neighboring Glens Falls MPO to the north. We have a variety of federal funding sources available. I'll discuss them in more detail on another slide, but certain activities are eligible for certain fund sources. And certain fund sources can also only be spent in certain areas, urban versus non-urban, things like that. So going back in time, 3 years, our current TIP began October 1st, 2022. And when that TIP was adopted in 2022, we convened a TIP task force that was comprised of a lot of local project sponsors and a lot of members of our planning committee. And we debriefed all of the TIP applicants on the process, and we debriefed staff here at the Transportation Council as well. And we asked everyone, what worked well, what didn't work well, what was challenging about the application, what was maybe burdensome to prepare for the application. We got a lot of great feedback from everyone. And we got direction from the TIP task force to try to streamline our application process and streamline our scoring process as well to try to reduce burden, not just on the applicants, but on staff here who have to score all the projects. So the TIP task force met 12 times to discuss not just the upcoming TIP update, but many other topics relating to infrastructure and project delivery and things of that nature. And the TIP task force prepared this TIP guidance document that really guided the whole TIP update and established new scoring criteria for the projects. And that was adopted by our board last year. So we issued the call for projects for the TIP update on October 15th, 2024. We used an online JotForm application. It worked very well last time. We got great feedback from applicants on it, so we continue to use it for the current TIP update. We held a sponsor information workshop on October 24th. It was very well attended. A lot of people joined and asked questions about TIP project eligibility and how the application works and things of that nature. We had a different application for each of the 6 project categories, and in total we received 61 applications from 19 different project sponsors. The total request from all 61 applications we received was $454 million, which we knew was going to exceed the amount of federal funding available to the region. So we went in and scored all 61 of these applications in accordance with the guidelines laid out in the TIP guidance document that the TIP task force prepared. Pictured here on the right, you can see how many applications we received in each category. 12 for road paving, 4 for complete streets. The most used category was bridges. We had 24 bridge applications, 10 for bike ped trails, 7 in the congestion, freight, and air quality category, which covers things like roundabouts or intersection improvements, things of that nature. And then 4 other applications as well. So once we received the 61 applications, staff here at the Transportation Council evaluated all 61 of them using the methodology in that TIP guidance document. Each project category was scored in a category specific way. So each category, most of the categories received both a quantitative benefit cost score that was developed using our in-house travel demand model. And then the projects also received a set of qualitative merit scores to capture project features that weren't a part of the quantitative score. So amenities and quality of life benefits and things like that would be captured by the merit scores. We scored all 61 projects, and we worked with staff at New York State DOT to determine which funding sources each project would be eligible for. And we knew that that would be very important because we know for this TIP update, for some fund sources, we have a lot of funding available. For other fund sources, we have very little available. So we knew that that would be the main criterion for determining which projects we can fund. Staff here prepared fact sheets for all 61 applications and summarized this in various ways and brought this all to our planning committee who worked to prepare the draft capital program. Speaking of fund sources, there are a number available to us. The 4 that we expected to have the most availability for in this TIP update are listed here. There was the National Highway Performance Program, NHPP. This funds projects on the National Highway System, which includes all the interstate highways, but also a lot of other high-level roads, arterials as well. And we expected that we would have the most availability in this funding source. We also have access to the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. Some of that funding is made available just to the Albany, Schenectady, Troy urbanized area. We have some for the separate Saratoga Springs urbanized area as well. And then we have some flex funding in that block grant program that can be used anywhere. But we didn't expect to have much of this funding available for the update. Highway Safety Improvement Program funding. This can fund safety projects on any street on or off the federal aid network. We knew we would have some of this available. And one of the new funding sources with the last transportation bill is the Bridge Formula Program, BFP, which funds bridge work. And we knew we would have a good amount of this available to use in the update as well. So these we expected would be the four main funding sources for programming new projects. We worked with New York State DOT staff to determine how much of each fund source would be available for programming. You can see the table here. NYSTOT prepared an estimate for each of the 5 fiscal years of the TIP, beginning with federal fiscal year 26 and going through 2030. And listed here, you can see our best estimate of what the funding availability will be in each year for each funding source. So we expected to have a total of 492 million available, but not all of that would be available for new projects because we have a lot of existing projects that won't be complete by October 1st that need to roll in to the new TIP. So I'll talk a bit more about that here. All of the existing projects that won't be complete by October 1st, either due to timeline delays or simply because they had phases in 26 or later all along. Either way, these projects would have to roll into the new TIP. So we reached out to all of our existing project sponsors last year in November, and we asked for project updates. And we received quite a few. We asked for updated timelines and costs. Projects that were obligated already, those would not need to roll in. So those free up funding. Projects that are rolling in, we made sure to get updated costs on all of those. So pictured on the right, you can see the table of all of our existing project sponsors and how many projects they have and what our estimate is for the cost of the roll-in. Some sponsors, you'll notice there's no cost in that roll-in column, and that's because their project is scheduled to be completed this year, but might roll into the new TIP, but we're not sure yet. So we don't yet have a cost estimate for the roll-in value for those projects. But in total, our estimate for the roll-in was about 294 million. In addition to the roll-in, we have some other uses for the funding. We received requests for set-asides from New York State DOT and from CDTA. NYSTOT had 10 set-asides on our last TIP that they wanted to continue. The set-asides fund things that are not site-specific, so they fund region-wide programs for pavement maintenance or bridge maintenance or safety upgrades, things of that nature. They're asking for 2 new set-asides with this TIP update. Listed here, the first is a pedestrian safety action plan implementation set-aside for 2 million. And they're also asking for 600,000 to hire a consultant to assist with traffic signal upgrades across the region. CDTA gets a set-aside as well. They 3 years ago, it was for bus rapid transit implementation. They are proposing to continue that set aside, but rework it into a more general enhanced transit improvements set aside for 18.75 million over the 5 years of the TIP. In addition, CDTA is adding about 22 Federal Transit Administration funded transit projects to the TIP as well. So those don't count against the core funds that we saw on the earlier slide. Those are bringing FTA funds into the region. And finally, there were two set-asides that we, the Transportation Council, are proposing for the new tip. $2 million for implementation for our Safe Streets for All grant, which will be wrapping up this year. We're doing a large Safe Streets for All study for the four-county region to identify high crash locations and opportunities for safety projects to treat those locations. So the $2 million set aside will help with implementation once the study is complete. And we are also requesting funding for an update to our regional travel demand model, including conducting a household travel survey to collect the data we need for the model update. So after all of the roll-ins and set-asides were tallied up, we had about $192 million available in funding across all of our fund sources for new site-specific projects. So this is the funding available to fund those 61 applications we received in our call for projects. The table here lists on the left, those were the planning targets. That's the total amount of funding available for the 5-year program. You can see we subtracted the roll-in amounts listed here as 199 because we're just looking at the federal amounts for this table, only the amounts that count against those planning targets in the first column. That would leave 291 million available, but we're proposing another 99 million in region-wide set-asides as well. So that's how we arrived at the figure of 192 million for new projects. So how do we choose new projects? The selection is up to our planning committee, which is comprised of local planners and engineers from all of the local public agencies, as well as staff from DOT and CDTA and other agencies. So we brought all of the project applications to our planning committee on January 8th and again on January 29th. And we brought the results of the project evaluations to them as well. And the planning committee selected projects for the draft tip. The main selection criterion, as I mentioned, was fund source availability. We knew that some funding sources like NHPP, we had a lot of money available, so we could select a lot of NHPP eligible projects. But other fund sources had less availability, so we weren't able to choose many of those projects if they were only eligible for that fund source. So we worked with planning committee during these two meetings to select projects from among the 61 applications we received. In total, 29 new site-specific projects were selected, totaling $211 million, which is a little bit over the target, a little bit over the amount that we expected to be available. But the idea is that if we overprogram a little bit, we can put some of those projects in the out years of the tip and then bring them forward when needed, if they're ready to go sooner. So we'll go through the 29 new site-specific projects now. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Ethan Townsend to run us through those project lists. So go ahead, Ethan.
Thanks, Andrew. So to quickly go through the projects that were selected and also a little bit about how projects were selected in each category. To start, the bike and ped only category, the planning committee recommended funding 3 out of the 10 projects that were applied for. And those were just the 3 top scoring projects in the categories, being the Village of Colonies, Sand Creek Road improvements, Town of East Greenbushes, Gilligan Roadside Path enhancements, and the Town of Guilderland's Western Tawasentha bike path. In the complete streets category, the planning committee chose to fund the top 2 of the 4 total projects that were applied for in that category. Again, just the top 2 best scoring projects: the City of Cohoes Saratoga Street Enhancement Project and the City of Albany's Washington Ave Complete Streets Project. The bridge category, I won't read through each of the projects that were selected, but the projects that were selected were all of the local projects that were applied for. So, oh, did I say bridge? I meant Pavement, Andrew, sorry.
I'll go back. There you go.
So pavement, all of the local projects that were applied for were funded, that being the Schenectady and Saratoga County projects. Those were the only locals that applied for pavement only projects. And then the DOT priority projects were selected. DOT chose to not fund 3 of their pavement projects so that funds could be used for other projects and other local priorities. So on the next slide, we have the bridge projects. This was, like Andrew said, the category that received the most applications, primarily from DOT and from Saratoga County. So DOT and Saratoga County both received their priority projects, and most of them were projects that scored fairly highly, so they likely would have been funded regardless. There were 2 other local projects that were applied for. So the Planning Committee was able to fund the town of Sand Lake's first Dike Road over Burden Lake project. The only other local bridge project that was applied for was from the town of Greenfield, and unfortunately, that project was just not eligible for any federal fund source, which is why it was not selected. In the congestion, freight, and air quality, or CFAC category, there were 7 projects that were applied for, and the Planning Committee was able to fund 6 of them. The only one that didn't get funded was the second Town of Half Moon project, which scored lower than the project that was selected and also was slightly more expensive. So Town of Half Moon got 1, everyone else got all the projects they applied for. Lastly, in the other category, there were 4 projects that were applied for. 2 of those were 2 of the set-asides Andrew mentioned before, the safety action plan upgrades and the traffic signal consultant set-aside. So those were funded off the top. And then of the 2 remaining projects, Planning Committee was able to fund DOT's design-only project for the Route 378 over the Hudson River bridge replacement. So no actual construction funding included, but to make sure that project stays rolling after the ongoing Pell study is completed. The only other project that was applied for was the Crumbkill Basin analysis from the town of Guilderland, and unfortunately that project also did not have any federal fund sources available, so it was not able to be funded. I want to go to the next slide, Andrew.
Okay.
So from here, we are now in the public review process. It began last Friday and runs for 45 days through April 21st. You can view all of the TIP documents on our webpage that we designed specifically for the TIP update. You can get there by going to capitalmpo.org/TIP update. On that website, you can take the online survey, which is the most convenient way to leave feedback either about a specific project or about the overall funding program. So that's going to be going on through the whole public comment period. So at any point you can submit feedback. Today, March 13th, we're doing this virtual TIP public meeting. And then next Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m., we'll be having a open house specifically for the TIP, so people can come. We'll have some materials printed out, including maps of the funding project. We'll have a copy of the draft program, and we'll speak to people and get comments there. Also, during the whole public review process, comments can be sent in to us either via email through info@capitalmpo.org, or they can be sent directly to us through the mail at our address, addressed to the Transportation Council at 1 Park Place, Suite 100, Albany, New York. Through this public review process, we are going to be responding to comments as they're received, and we're also going to be including a summary of all the public response and all the public outreach in the TIP document, as well as the comments and the responses in the appendix to the document. We go to the next slide, Andrew. So on our website, like I said, that's the best place to leave a comment through the online Jot form survey. There you'll be able to find a copy of the draft program as well as the draft appendix. You'll be able to find an interactive map of all the new and rolling in projects. So you can see exactly where everything is and find further project information from there. Some other content that you can find on that webpage are fact sheets for all of the projects that were applied for, not just the ones that were funded. So you can see information about the projects as well as how it's scored, which played into how projects were selected. You can also find an executive summary of the TIP draft document, just a little more quickly digestible, and that's been translated into our core languages. And then you can also find the complete remaining schedule for the TIP, which we'll go over on the next slide, Andrew. So from here, on April 21st, the public comment period will end. At that point, we will start going through those comments, making any necessary revisions or updates to the TIP per those comments, which we will then bring a final draft to the Planning Committee for approval on May 7. Assuming the Planning Committee does not have any comments, it will go directly to Policy Board at the next meeting. If the Planning Committee does have any final comments, we'll make those small revisions and then bring it to Policy Board on June 5th. A Policy Board is expected to approve the final TIP on June 5th at their regular Policy Board meeting. And then come October 1st, 2024, the new TIP will go live, where it becomes the actual TIP that is how we are funding projects. So if you want to go to the next slide, Andrew. That is the end of our presentation. So I want to thank everyone for participating, for showing up. If you have any questions, feel free to send them in the Q&A now. Otherwise, we will wrap it up in a minute or so if no one has any questions.
Yep. Thank you, Ethan, and thank you everyone for joining us. If you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the Q&A chat pod. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up.
All right. Doesn't look like we're getting any questions. If anyone has any questions in the future, please fill out the online survey or send us an email or give us a call to get those comments in.
Okay. Well, we can end the live
Great.
stream here, but